Good morning, government students. Today we're going to be doing Notes 3.3, the government at work, the bureaucracy. So, your essential question: what is a bureaucracy? Right, so bureaucracy has a hierarchy. So it has hierarchical authority. Bureaucracies are based on a pyramid. So we have a chain of command, kind of like a business, how a business would have a CEO on top and the hourly workers down at the bottom. It's the same thing for the government. So if we're talking about the executive branch, the person at the top would be the president, then under that would be the vice president, of course. And then we would have the cabinet and all the people working in the executive branch down near the end of the pyramid. We have a lot of job specialization in bureaucracies. So that means each bureaucrat or person who works in this organization, so this person who works in the executive branch, has certain defined duties and responsibilities. They also have very formalized rules. So there's rules and regulations that determine procedures and how the work gets done. The federal bureaucracy is all of the agencies, all of the people, and all of the procedures through which the federal government operates. The president is obviously the person in charge of the executive branch, so the president is the chief administrator of all the federal government. The federal bureaucracy has division into areas of specialization. So, our Constitution, as we know, had Articles 1, 2, and 3 laid out. Article 1 established that legislative branch. Article 2 established the executive branch, which is what we're learning about now. And then Article 3, which we're going to learn about next, is the judicial branch. And all of these departments fall within Article 2, so fall under the executive branch of the presidency. So, all of these different departments: Department of Education, Department of Labor, Department of Defense, etc., etc. So the name department is reserved for agencies that are of cabinet rank, so the president's cabinet. The executive office of the president is also known as the EOP. The EOP is staffed by the president's most close advisors and assistants. The White House also has an office that works within it. So we have staff positions for the White House, including the Chief of Staff. So this is the person in charge of everyone who works in the White House. We have assistants to the president, the press secretary that talks to the press, all the reporters, all the news stations on behalf of the president, the counsel to the president's physicians, the president's own personal doctor. All of these people work within the White House. Then we also have the National Security Council, which advises the president on all domestic, foreign, and military matters that relate to national security. The members of the NSC, or the National Security Council, include the Vice President, the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of Defense. So, this is the White House where they get this work done. The president's closest advisors work near to him in the White House in what we call the West Wing. So, as you can see, the White House here is broken out in two different wings. So, we have the main section in the middle, then we have the West Wing where the president works, and then over here we have the East Wing. This is what the White House looks like inside. I think, as I've told you before, they have all kinds of things in the White House. The president, of course, gets to live here rent free for the 4 years that they are in office, or 8 years if they get reelected. They have a doctor in house if they ever need medical assistance. Of course, they have housekeeping to take care of all the cleaning. They have personal chefs to take care of all the cooking. They have a bowling alley. They have a movie theater, they have all kinds of bedrooms, the Oval Office. It's an enormous place. Within the executive branch, we also have the Office of Management and Budget. So the OMB prepares the federal budget that they submit to Congress. So the president comes up with a budget at the beginning of each year and then sends it to Congress saying, hey, these are the things I would like to be on part of our budget. And then Congress is able to work that and see if they can accommodate whatever the president would like. President doesn't always get what they want. Of course, there's going to be compromise, but remember, The budget has to be passed by Congress and then ultimately signed by the president. So they want to make sure that they get the president what they want. They also have the Office of National Drug Control Policy, which of course handles drug affairs, and the Council of Economic Advisors that advise the president on anything regarding economics. The executive departments are the units of federal administration. So each one of these departments is headed by a secretary. I know a secretary doesn't sound like someone who's necessarily in charge, but in the federal government, in the cabinet level positions, the secretary is actually the person in charge. So if we think about like the Department of Education, the person in charge is the Secretary of Education. Or the Department of Defense, the person in charge is the Secretary of Defense. The cabinet is this advisory body that obviously advises the president. The cabinet is made up of the heads of all these different executive departments. So the heads of the secretaries of all of these different departments make up the president's cabinet. So, as we were just saying, Secretary of Education, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of State, all of those people make up the president's cabinet. The president gets to appoint each of these people, the heads of the cabinet, and then it goes to the Senate and the Senate approves it. These people serve as experts in their field. So, if we're talking about the education department, so if we're talking about the Secretary of Education, that person theoretically would be an expert in education and would be able to advise the president on anything education related. So these are the last two cabinets we've had. I don't have a picture of our current cabinet because obviously during COVID times, they would not all be able to gather in one room so close together for a photo. But they did all just get appointed to their positions anyway, and most of them are still going through their Senate approval process. But this is President Obama's cabinet here on the left, President Trump's cabinet here on the right. And these are closer up so you can see kind of the makeup of the different groups that we have here. These are the current picks that were chosen by President Biden. Some of them have already been approved by the Senate, some have not. So, for instance, Pete Buttigieg, he has just been approved in the last week or so as the transportation secretary. He was approved by the Senate, I guess that was 2 weeks ago now. And he is the first openly LGBTQ cabinet advisor, secretary of any department. So that's very exciting progress for the LGBTQ community. But a lot of these people are still going through the process of getting approved by the Senate. Another part of the executive branch a lot of people don't think about are these independent executive agencies. They're also part of the executive branch, they just don't have cabinet status. These departments include things like NASA and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Those are both part of the executive branch. We also have independent regulatory commissions that are a part of the executive branch, like the Federal Trade Commission, Consumer Product Safety Commission, and then government corporations. So, government corporations are subject to the president's direction and control. So, some of these government corporations you might have heard of: the US Postal Service, it's a government corporation; Amtrak, the trains, government corporations. They carry out business like activities for the government. And the civil service is public employees who perform the administrative work of the government, except for the armed forces. But anyone who's not part of the armed forces who works for the government is considered part of the civil service. So these are people who work government jobs. That can be at the state level, at the local level, in Washington, D.C. They also have regulations on people who work in civil service, so people who work for the government, just to ensure that things are going fairly in those departments. So they have like the merit systems. So to ensure that people are getting their jobs based on merit, which can be difficult to regulate in the federal bureaucracy. They also have their pay set by Congress. Just like most government positions, their pay is set by Congress. And there's regulations on their political activities as well. So they are allowed to be political. I mean, they're allowed to vote, they're allowed to have political positions, but they have to make sure that if they're running for office, they're keeping that separate from their government work. So they can engage in political party work while engaging in government work. And that's the end of your notes for today. So go ahead and write a summary, a couple sentences about what you learned.